What is going on, everyone? This is True Code Sports Talk, and I am your host, Andrew Wright. And over in his living room is my co-host, Cody Johnson. Cody.
What is going on, everyone? It is a lovely Sunday evening. That's right. You are listening to us right now. We appreciate you guys for joining us. It's great for Drew and I to be back together once again. I think we're on a streak now, Drew. This is 2 episodes in a row where you and I are both recording, so this is fantastic. Before we get started, though, guys, please do not forget to subscribe to the podcast and on our YouTube channel. And also, please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all those social media sites. But before we dive into all the sports that, we're experts at talking about, Drew, what's going on, man?
Nothing much. My son is enjoying a popsicle right now, so you're probably going to hear him in the background.
I can hear him currently, and it's awesome.
He's also watching Coco Melon, and he thinks it's hilarious that his popsicle is dripping on his shirt. Huh?
No, I just watching Coco.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I was wrong. Nope. Just watching Coco Melon. Anyway, so yeah. No, everything's been going well. It was a really, really busy week for me last week.
Yeah.
With girls basketball starting back up. And I helped my father-in-law coach baseball a little bit, so that was fun. And then also went to the zoo with my daughter for her end-of-the-year field trip, so that was fun as well. So I basically spent 2-3 days straight just out in the sun, so I am completely sunburnt. Luckily, my wife knew that I would burn, so she told me to put on sunscreen, and so luckily I did, because now it doesn't hurt as bad. So yeah. That's good.
That's good. I mean, you've got a nice little medium rare tint to you, so yeah, you're looking pretty good.
Yeah, I think it also doesn't help that I wore a red shirt today, so it's highlighting the red in my skin.
It's popping out the sunburn.
Yeah. I don't know if that's how clothes work. I'm just guessing. Babe, anything? No? That doesn't work? She says no, I'm down. She gave me the dumbest look. so I'm wrong. Anyway, so yeah, but I'm glad to be here. Almost didn't happen this week because I totally blanked yesterday. Dude, that was the weirdest thing ever. My wife and I were just sitting here watching our show, and it's like 9:30, and we were just, nothing happened. Like, I kind of looked at my phone and was like, oh, it's 9:30. And I was like, oh my God, we were supposed to record. I was like, I wonder what Cody's doing, because he didn't even message me. So I messaged you. I was like, hey, Mike, bad, dude. I totally forgot. And you're like, oh, I thought you were dead or something. And I was like, well, thanks for the text, man.
Well, because sometimes I feel bad when I text you if I'm already waiting for you, because my mind is, you already know. So if I send you a text, I don't want to rush you. And so I always feel bad when I send you a text and you're like, I know I'm setting up right now or whatnot. So I was figuring like, oh, he's probably getting ready or whatnot. And then you sent me that text, and I was like, well, at least I know you didn't die, because I was kind of concerned. Like, I really hadn't heard from you majority of the day other than like first thing in the morning. And so, yeah, I'm glad that everything's okay. But yeah, it was a little interesting night last night.
Yeah. No, it's funny because my wife and I were going to take a day where we were just going to be, lazy, because it was seriously a really long week for both of us. I mean, my wife worked way more than she normally does. I mean, she's working, basically a 9-to-5 job. And she worked overtime, I think it was 2 days. So she worked like a 12-hour shift on 2 days that past week. And then, with my, basketball stuff and all that jazz, like everything, we were just rushing out the door every single day. So yesterday we were like, okay, we're going to take a rest. We're going to relax. And then we didn't do that. My son fell asleep. And then, my wife and I, we were like, oh, we're going to nap a little bit. We kind of napped for like 20 minutes. Yeah. And man, it rejuvenated us. We were like, okay. And so my wife was like, I'm going to go through all my clothes and, get my summer clothes out, and I'm going to put all my winter clothes away. And I was like, okay. And then I went out in the garage and I was like, oh, I'm going to grab a few things. And then I just ended up starting emptying out boxes. And so it was like so much for lazy. So then by that time
Uh-huh.
We were supposed to I was supposed to start getting ready and everything. I was like, oh, I'm just gonna chill. I'm gonna relax. We did some good work today, and then I totally forgot we were supposed to record. So
It's
there
all
you
good.
go.
It's all good. Truthfully, it was kind of funny too because I didn't do anything at all yesterday. I think my wife and I did our normal coffee date, and then we've been going to the gym. So we did our workout in the morning, and then we just lounged around the house. And actually, what's odd is usually Saturdays are our busy day where we're doing errands or whatnot. But for some reason on Saturday, she let me do absolutely nothing. So I was working on the show last night, or majority of the day yesterday, and doing some notes and whatnot. And she took a couple of cat naps because she's been sleep deprived the last week. So she took 2 long naps yesterday. So I really didn't have anything to do, which was nice. And then it really didn't mess up anything. If anything, it was kind of nice to not have anything, but I was just worried that something had happened to you. And I was like, well, I really haven't heard from Drew since 11, and I hope he's okay.
Yeah. So my bad. Anyway.
All good.
So well, we got sports to talk about, Cody. So enough about our old age and forgetting things. So game 2 actually just ended for the NBA Finals between the Nuggets and the Heat. So right now, obviously, it's 1-1 tie right now. It was a pretty close game. One thing that I did take away that I noticed is Jamal Murray. He was not shooting or making his shots. It was really Jokic, and that was about it for the Nuggets. I mean, a lot of guys were just. I think they had maybe 2 or 3 other guys in double figures in points, and I think it was at best 10. Jamal Murray, I didn't see the end how many points he ended up with, but when I looked in the middle of the fourth quarter, he was only at 13 points. So I mean, Jamal Murray at 13 points during the NBA Finals probably not going to help you win there.
Yeah.
Also one thing I did take away as well is Jimmy Butler actually wasn't shooting very well today either. But he ended up getting the win. I mean, it looked like Gabe Vincent was their top scorer today. So interesting stuff. I know everyone's been making fun of it, the Nuggets and Heat, this is a ridiculous NBA Finals. And, to a degree, I get it. I do understand it. But I will say this. It is between 2 very good teams. The Nuggets are a very exciting team to watch because they move the ball very well. It's almost Golden State-esque back in the day. And then also the Heat play a really good defense. So if you're really into that, of course, it's going to be interesting. But if you're not, I get why people aren't really excited. I mean, Jimmy Butler's not going to go, off and score 50 points or whatever. But Jokic is an incredible player. He's always impressive to watch. So, that's kind of what I like to kind of keep up on it. But have I been, dedicated to watching it? Honestly, I will be honest, I have not. I'm a Laker fan, of course. I mean, if people don't know that, and we love watching the Lakers, but I don't think it has anything to do with them being out. I just think, you don't really you haven't seen the Nuggets play in almost a week. We've been watching the Heat, and they kind of almost fell apart against the Celtics. So I don't know. It just hasn't been super exciting. You don't have that superstar power like you did against, with the Lakers or with the Celtics. You don't have those name players. So, I do think the Nuggets, I said to you on Marco Polo, I do think the Nuggets are going to win in 5. And so I wholeheartedly believe that this is the Heat's one game that they're going to get. And I think the Nuggets are going to end up being NBA champions. But hey, maybe I'm wrong. I mean, the Heat could end up winning. So we'll see what happens. But, that's kind of my takeaway from the series so far.
Yeah. I'll be honest too. I haven't really caught up with the season or with the series as often as I probably would have. I think it is because there's not really a huge marquee teams left. I mean, Nuggets have been almost the number one team in the West, at least for 90% of the season. I mean, the only interesting storyline is Miami Heat coming in as the 8th seed, and they were literally a play-in team that had to win their final play-in game and just to even get in the playoffs, and now they're in the finals. But to just talk about game 2 real quick, I didn't watch hardly any of it, but if I had to look at the stats, I mean, ironically, the Miami Heat's 3-point shooting is what got them over the top against the Nuggets. Jamal Murray, actually, to answer your question, Drew, he finished with 18. And I think one of the Nuggets problem, or what the Nuggets problem was primarily, is obviously Jokic was their main scorer at 41 points. He had 11 rebounds, which is actually a pretty low number, and he only had 4 assists. So I don't want to say the Miami Dolphins, the Miami Heat did a great job at containing Jokic, but I mean, if you're going to have him score 41 and that's the only effective part of the game that he influences, just scoring, and you can control him staying off the boards or stop some of the assists that he has, I think, that's ultimately a pretty good game that you can be happy with. Jamal Murray, though, I mean, I think what you just hit the nail right on the head. He only had 18 points. Normally, he would need to do 25 plus, maybe even get into 30 to be competitive. I'd also say another player, too, that had a disappointing outing, if I'm just looking at the stats, was Michael Porter Jr. He only shot the ball 8 times, only scored 5 points. His caliber of play, he needs to be more involved with that. And the Miami Heat, they just scored. They had 3 guys score 20 points. 5 total people score in double figures. So, if you're the Nuggets, I mean, when you have your nights where you don't shoot the ball very well, you're going to have Miami that, will find life. And they found it in the fourth quarter, which is where they came back from. But I'm going to be completely honest. I think I'm Marco Polo Jr. and I said Nuggets in 6. I just don't know how Miami is going to have enough firepower for a 7-game series. But also, too, I'm not really paying that close of attention to it. This kind of reminds me of when the Pistons and the Spurs met each other in the NBA Finals way back in the day in the early 2000s. And they were both like heavy defensive teams, nothing really special offensively. And then that was, I think, the lowest viewed finals in the NBA's history, I think. And I don't want to say this is close to it because they're both really good offensive teams, but I just think that no one really has an interest in it just because it's not the Lakers, it's not the Warriors, it's not the Celtics even, it's not the Bucks. I think that they've gotten themselves a marquee kind of a name now. It's not the Sixers. I just think that people see Miami and it's an okay team. Really, they shouldn't have gotten here, but they outlasted everyone. Nuggets, I think, are probably the most exciting team, but no one that I know of is huge Denver Nuggets fan. So I think that's just what we're all kind of enduring. So I don't know for you, Drew, but you and I have been texting a lot more regarding Formula One more than in the NBA Finals. So I think that's where our mindset is for the duration of the NBA Finals.
Yeah, I don't know how to say this without sounding like a jerk, but I mean, Formula One has been more exciting, and it's because it's okay to be, I think everyone is starting to come to grips with, like, especially in Formula One, like, okay, Max Verstappen is going to probably, I mean, about 99% sure he's going to win the Drivers' Championship. But it's actually a pretty tight race between second place and actually the constructors as well. Like, we're about almost 100% sure that, Red Bull is going to win the Constructors' Cup. But second place has been very interesting. Mm-hmm. And, I think with the NBA, you can't do that. You can't just be like, oh, well, they were second place. That's exciting. So that's kind of the difference that you're kind of having. If it were like last year when Verstappen was kind of running away with it, mm-hmm. Last year Formula One was kind of boring because it was just like, I mean, he's dominating everyone, and it seems like no one else. And it seemed like every year we were seeing, or every race, it was, Charles Leclerc, he could rival him, and then all of a sudden something happens. So, mm-hmm. With the NBA right now, it's just these are the 2 teams that are left, and unfortunately, they're not the most popular teams. I mean, Miami Heat does have a really good following, mm-hmm. But I mean, I think the consensus is that the Nuggets are going to win. I don't think too many people believe that the Heat are going to win. And so that's kind of that's where we're at. It's kind of like last year in Formula One, where it was like, well, I mean, it looks like it's just going to be Verstappen, and no one else is really even rivaling it. Now this year, it's kind of like, okay, we figure he's going to win, but what else is going to happen? And so I think the NBA, we're at a point where we're just like, well, it kind of seems like the Nuggets are going to win, and it's not really exciting to watch because the Heat have to play, I mean, absolutely flawless to beat the Nuggets. And I just, you're going to get every game. So unfortunately.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, Cody. Well, let's talk about some other things. There is a lot of different NBA coaching hirings going on. I'm looking at the NBA, the coaching tracker, which kind of sounds wild to me. Back in my day, we didn't care. No, we didn't, because like nowadays it's like you go online and they have the free agent tracker, or draft tracker or whatever. And now there's coaching hiring tracker, which just goes to show you that teams are so impatient now. It's just so ridiculous. But anyway, it's just funny. This is a complete side note and I'm sorry for this, but it was just funny because I was actually talking to one of the coaches for varsity girls basketball at Singer West, and so we were just kind of chatting. We were just talking about the NBA, and I was like, you know what, when I was growing up watching the NBA, if your team hired a head coach, you knew you were going to have him for at least 3 years, like any sport, not even just NBA. But I was like, you knew that the first year it's going to be okay. We got to implement the culture. We got to implement what we want to do. Okay, this is what we want to end up doing. So year one's probably not going to be fantastic. Maybe you get lucky and it is. Year two was, okay, I'm going to get my guys. Now we're going to start seeing a little bit better of basketball playing. And then in year three, you're going to see, okay, this is what the team is going to look like. Now, if they improve, does it look like they can continue to improve? And that was kind of the mindset. And then after that third year, then it was like, okay, are they going to sign him to extension? Did he do what they thought he was going to do? They're going to let him go. Now it's just like you win coach of the year and they're like, well, you didn't win an NBA finals, so we're going to take you out.
You're gone. Yeah.
So crazy. I really thought Monty Williams being fired by the Suns was shocking. And I understand what the Suns are doing where they're trying to keep Katie happy. They're trying to keep Devin Booker happy. But listen, this is what everyone was saying when they got KD. You lost all your depth. That's not on Monty Williams. That is on the trade. I'm not saying it's on Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant was fantastic. But, I mean, Chris Paul was hurt. DeAndre Ayton is almost a shell of himself right now. It's kind of weird.
I think he checked out at towards lots of the season. I think that's why you weren't seeing Ayton at his best.
So it's just that's why I was very surprised that Monty Williams was go. Now, him going to the Pistons, at first I was like, I don't really understand it. Like I don't get why he would go to Detroit. But then I was kind of thinking about it, and I do realize that this is one of the few teams where he's coming and he's actually going to get time to develop a team. Whereas here in Phoenix, he kind of had a couple of years and they were like, well, we haven't won an NBA Finals yet. And it was like, well, okay, we got there, but we didn't win it. And we lost to a really good team. What now all of a sudden we're going to fire our coach? I don't know. It was still weird to me, but I do think this is one of the very few spots in the NBA where you'll actually have time to grow. You have Jaden Ivey there. You have Cade Cunningham. I always forget the third guy I'm always thinking about for the Pistons. But, there are guys that you can build around. And so it'll be really interesting to see. Do I think the question that you've brought up here, and I'm kind of going long on it, and I'm sorry, but is, which head coach will be most successful on their new teams? I'm not saying Monty Williams. I'm just saying I was very surprised that Monty Williams was let go. I do think he's going to have time to be successful, but if we're just talking about next year, I don't think that's going to be Monty Williams. But I
Yeah.
do think he has a potential to be really, really good and make Detroit really, really good.
Mhm.
How good? I don't know. I don't know if I'm willing to say NBA Finals, but I do think that they could be a playoff team come year 2, I would say probably year 3 under Williams. I think that's a possibility. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, just a quick reminder, too, the Pistons also traded for James Wiseman at the trade deadline for the Warriors. So they have a big man.
I was thinking Wiseman.
Yeah, they have a big man. They have, arguably probably one of the best young point guards up and coming in Cunningham, along with a plethora of other young talent. Like, I think Monty Williams is going to get a lot out of them. And I think, obviously, what he rested his hat on in Phoenix was defense. And I think this team is young, athletic, and is long. Yeah. And I think I do agree that he'll find some earlies. Well, I don't know about early. I think that this team will surprise some people, but I think that they'll really hit their stride in year 2 once they actually have, that culture instilled. And then maybe with some of these new players that you just listed off, they're all hungry to win as well. I can't imagine that, you being in the NBA and you're a bottom 5 team every year. I imagine that they're going to want to have some pride and make some improvements. So, but anyways, continue on your point.
Well, okay, so we have, who's going to be the most successful right now. The thought is Frank Vogel is going to be the head coach for the Phoenix Suns. I don't think it's been official yet, but it's been one of those worst kept secret type things. We have Nick Nurse in Philadelphia, Monty Williams, as I said, in Detroit, Adrian Griffin, supposedly the Bucks head coach, and then Ime Udoka to the Rockets. Houston. Yeah.
Oh,
so
wow. I forgot about that one.
So there are a few head coaches that are going to be out there now. It'll be interesting to see who the Raptors get. I mean, right now we're just kind of saying the Bucks are going to hire Adrian Griffin, but we're not, 100% sure and whatnot. So we'll have to figure that out, but or we'll hear about that probably soon. But who do you think is going to be more successful with their new team?
Okay, so just also to preference too, I don't think you and I have any time frame on any of this success. We're just saying like whenever these coaches
let's break that down. Let's say who's going to be the most successful next year and who is probably going to be more successful long term.
Okay, so next year, immediate success will probably go to Nick Nurse because of Embiid, Tyrese Maxey. I imagine that they're going to make some roster tweaks. I can't imagine that roster is going to remain exactly the same from what Doc Rivers had. Nick Nurse likes to run a little bit different of a style offense, and I do think that he'll get a little bit more out of Embiid than Doc Rivers did. Hopefully, Nick Nurse will convince Embiid to stay in the block and not go out to the three-point range where he doesn't belong. But anyways, but for future success, I think Frank Vogel will probably have more success like long term when it comes to the Phoenix Suns, because you still have KD under contract for at least 3 seasons, I think 2 minimum, not including Devin Booker, who's still really young. You still have DeAndre Ayton, who you just re-signed, and I think that he will have a hunger because of the new head coach. Frank Vogel is a defensive type of coach, and I do think that they will make some roster changes to address the depth. I was telling you this on Marco Polo. I don't know how realistic this is, but with the whole Boston Celtics, I don't want to say collapsing, but just having a really bad conference finals, I would not be surprised if I saw like Phoenix make a trade for like Marcus Smart and for the Celtics to maybe acquire Chris Paul to have like a veteran point guard to help like lead that young team and the Celtics to maybe get to a championship. Mm-hmm. And I think that, Marcus Smart would kind of be a defensive anchor that, the Suns lost when it came to Mikal Bridges, who was traded to Brooklyn that season as well. So I think Frank Vogel will probably find the most success just because Phoenix has a ton of offensive weapons. They're fairly young. I mean, you keep KD on a pitch count, so to speak, and you have Devin Booker who can carry a majority of that load for a long part of that season. And I do think that they will address the depth. Like I said, I would be hard pressed to assume though that Chris Paul would remain on that team. He's a pretty big cap hit, and he's 38 now. So I imagine that they'll probably get younger at the point guard position. But I think Frank Vogel long term next year, in my opinion, Nick Nurse.
Yeah, I would agree with, if we're talking just next year, I think Nick Nurse is the one, because that Sixers team is, I mean, we assume they're keeping Embiid, which I don't see why they wouldn't, but, I made the statement that I wouldn't.
Right.
It sounds like James Harden is a possibility that he's gone. So it could be a little bit different of a team, but I don't think that by that much. I think Tobias Harris is still going to be there. I do think that Tyrese Maxey has run the offense really well, and he's actually been this year that he was like their number 3 guy, which it was supposed to be Tobias Harris, which is kind of crazy. But
yeah,
I think Nick Nurse is a defensive-minded head coach. That Toronto Raptors team was always a defensive threat.
Mm-hmm.
They played a lot of the small ball, and they did really well with it. So I do think that, defense does transition pretty quickly when it comes to, head coaches coming into new teams. Usually the defensive side of the ball is what changed first. And I think Embiid is an incredible defender. Obviously, he's lengthy, that helps. But, he's actually pretty smart with his blocks. So I think he's going to actually thrive with Nick Nurse. Long term, I kind of want to say Nick Nurse, but I'm not going to, just because I still am very unsure about Embiid, especially him staying healthy. That is a huge concern for me, but I'm actually going to go with Ime Udoka.
Oh, okay.
I think he's actually going to be really good for the Rockets. I think Jalen Green has been nice.
Mm-hmm.
He's been nice. He scores a lot of points, but he's on a really bad team. So it's, I listened to the Bill Simmons podcast, and right now he's kind of doing every Sunday he does him and Ryan Russillo, and they both kind of say, like, it's easy to score or be the leading scorer on a bad team. Mm-hmm. It's harder to be a good team and still be that good, because now teams are kind of focused a little bit more. They got to be worried about everyone else as well. So can you still have that dog in you when the defense isn't so lackadaisy? So I think Jalen Green will actually really improve with Ime Udoka, because if you look at Udoka with Boston, that team changed quick, and they were so good. And now you look at their team right now, and you're just like, man, you could see the complete difference. Now, Boston still got to the Eastern Conference Finals. I understand that, but with Ime Udoka, they were going to go to the NBA Finals. I don't think the Heat would have had a chance, because I think Robert Williams was playing so great under Udoka. I think Tatum was starting to find himself under him. I think Jaylen Brown was being utilized really well. And then Marcus Smart had the freedom to be his defensive self. And I think this year he didn't. So I do feel like Ime Udoka is a very good coach. If he could keep it in his pants, then he will be on Houston for a while. But we will see. But as of right now, I do think that Udoka is going to be long term. I think he's going to be the more successful coach, because I do think the Rockets have some really good pieces. He's going to have to put them together, which I think he can. I think he's already proven that he can do that.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see how their offseason goes, because I wonder if they think they're going to be ready to kind of get better this season, or if it's going to be more the same this year, and then next year it's going to be kind of the okay, now we're going to build. So it'll be interesting.
Side question real quick. I'm pretty certain that the worst kept secret is James Harden's going back to Houston. At least that's what I keep hearing, and reports that he's debating. I think he's going back. Do you think that would hurt the team?
No. I actually, now it's going to be up to Harden whether he's going to be okay taking the role of more of a traditional point guard rather than just shooting how he always does.
Mhm.
And I think what we saw, the success with the Sixers when when Harden was kind of running the offense, yes, we saw a game where he scored I think it was like 45 points or something in like a game one or whatever
Mhm.
without Embiid, which everyone was like freaking out. I don't think you're not going to have that Harden every game. It's not going to happen. It's not who he is anymore. But what I saw is he really conducts the offense really well. He's a very good passer. He's a very underrated passer. He always has been underrated. And he's very good at getting inside, making those step backs, making the defender commit,
Mhm.
and then going to the weak side or going to the strong side and finding that open shooter, or getting a big man to kind of step up as soon as he's trying to go inside, and he
Mhm.
can make that pass to where the big man can score. So, and the Rockets just picked up a kid, Jabari. Oh man, I can't
Jabari
think.
Smith.
Yes, Jabari Smith.
Mhm.
And I think he would actually really learn a lot and learn to where he needs to go through James Harden. So the key is James Harden has to understand and has to pretty much admit, listen, I'm not the James Harden that we all remember.
Mhm.
I think if he's about 15 points a game, I think you're going to be okay with that, because if he can make those assists, if he can get average the 8-9 assists per game or even 7, whatever it is,
Mhm.
I think he will really impact that team, and the young kids will learn. And I think Jalen Green hopefully will also thrive from that. That one's going to be a little bit harder because he needs to refine his shooting. Jalen Green's more of a high flyer,
Mhm.
but Jabari Smith, I think he could really, really benefit from James Harden. So I actually don't think it would be that bad. But now, if he starts going to Houston and then just starts chucking up threes left and right, then I think it will definitely hurt them. Yes.
I think that was more of a D'Antoni coaching call. But I agree. I don't think Harden's that player anymore. But I mean, I think Harden is really good about playing a role. But I think what I get concerned with is, as somebody who's a veteran that's been in the league for a lot of years, seen a lot of basketball, he sure does, to my perspective, throw a lot of temper tantrums if it doesn't go his way. And I just don't know if that's what you would want as a coach to be around a young team to learn from. That's just my only concern. But
That's true. That's a
there's
good
no
point.
doubt, though, you want a player like James Harden on your team just for the offense, getting the guys ready. But when he is not 100% invested, it's a really hard situation to want to have your young players around. That's just in what I would
And
what I'd say.
maybe if you're a Doka and you do get James Harden, I think maybe there needs to be a discussion made about, hey, maybe he only plays about 60 games. Maybe it's not 82. Give him some rest.
Mhm.
Maybe we'll make up an injury. I don't know. I don't know if teams do that, but I'm pretty sure they do. But you get what I'm saying. Like,
Yeah.
hey, why don't you take a break? Shoot, go to Vegas. Go to Houston
Again.
strip clubs and enjoy your time a little bit, and then come on back. Just kind of let him be rejuvenated. He may need that. He may be like a Dennis Rodman type. So, you're going to have to. I think that's a serious conversation that they will have to have.
Yeah, probably. All right, you want to move on to what we've been dying to talk about since we jumped on?
Heck yeah.
All right.
Wait, what have we been dying to talk about?
Formula One, man. Get with it, dog.
That's
Come
true.
on.
We were already texting about it.
Oh, my God. Well, and also, too, I'm going to put myself out on blast. I did not get up at 6 a.m. to see the start of the race. I woke up at like 6:45. I DVR'd it. And then as soon as I got up, I went to go get coffee, came back, started it. So that way I could watch it in peace and quiet. So by the time I finished it, it was like 9:30, I think. But I already knew who like won in the pole positions by like 8-ish or whatever when it officially ended. But yeah, so I'll just put myself out on there. I know. Did you and Jess get up on time?
Yes, we did. We got up.
Congratulations, I didn't.
We got up at 5:55. I rubbed my eyes, tried to wake up a little bit, and then turned on the TV. And there was some nodding. There was some nodding off every now and then, but we pretty much watched the whole race. I don't think I fell asleep at all. Actually, I think I was into it. So that was cool, and it was really cool to see Lewis Hamilton coming in second.
Yeah.
George Russell. It kind of seemed like Checo was going to make a push at Russell, but he ended up not really forcing Russell's hand. I think Russell did a good job of keeping his distance. I think Checo ended up being like 3 seconds behind George Russell, so he was closing in, but it was kind of too little too late. So that was really cool. I mean, Verstappen dominated. We're not really surprised by that. We figured that was going to happen. So, but to see two Mercedes, a double podium for Mercedes, and now they're in second place now in the Constructors' Cup. That was a huge race for them. And Aston Martin, I know they're where they finished is decent, but it was a little concerning because it just seemed like Stroll kept getting passed. It seemed like Alonso would push to try and pass someone, and then later on would get passed by someone else, and it was just kind of a back and forth thing. So, so far so good for Mercedes the last couple of races, in my opinion.
Yeah.
They looked a lot better. So I think these upgrades so far have been tremendous for them.
Yeah, I think they're just about out of range to even catch up to Red Bull. Red Bull clearly is the faster car. I mean, it was on full display with Verstappen today. And then even in Monaco, he was faster. Now, granted, when that rain started, obviously it was more of a skillful thing. And, at least what I remember in Monaco, he was slipping a little bit before he changed on the intermediates, and then he did a little bit better. But he had such a far ahead lead that he was able to pit, come back, go through all that, and he still retained his lead. But I think Spain here it showed that Mercedes is for real on these upgrades. So we'll see. I think there's the one more race in Canada, and if I'm not mistaken, is there one more race in then spring or summer break, or is there summer break after Canada?
No, it should be. There's Canada, Austria, Great Britain, and I believe there's a few. I gotta look. At the full schedule.
Okay, there's 5 races, and then
yeah, basically
break.
Once August hits is when it's
okay,
no more. So we have Canada, Austria, and then in July we have Great Britain, Hungary, sorry. Belgium, and then they're on the break after the Belgium race. Yeah.
I'm curious to see if Mercedes can keep it up, though. I know that Canada is more. I'm looking at their circuit right now. They're a lot of straightaways. So, we'll see.
Canada is one of the easier tracks, at least like tire wise. It'll be kind of interesting to see if there's maybe some rain, because there is a couple of turns in Canada that are you've got to pretty much almost come to an extreme halt and then make that turn. So it'll be interesting to see how that looks. But yeah, I'm really excited about the Canada race, because it'll be really interesting to see how the straight speed for Mercedes will handle, especially with these upgrades, because I do still feel like Aston Martin does have a little more speed. It's going to be interesting.
I was going to ask you too, like we pretty much know that Red Bull is the fastest on a straight line regardless.
Just kidding. Yes.
Yeah.
No.
Are we not watching the same races?
Yeah.
But I guess the bigger question is between the upgrades with Mercedes and Aston Martin. Is Aston Martin still faster than Mercedes? Because that was apparent earlier this season.
Yeah.
And now it looks like Mercedes might have caught up.
Yeah, it did. It looked like Mercedes was the faster car. I mean, I was telling you at the very start of the race, Lando Norris had a really good jump, but so did Lewis Hamilton. And then Stroll was around there too, and Stroll was trying to get by Hamilton, and it looked like Hamilton had a really good spot where he was going to block him. and then Norris kind of bumped into Hamilton and obviously took Norris's piece of wing off, and then Stroll ended up passing him. So a lot of people were like, "Oh, what a great start!" But what I saw is he really benefited from Norris bumping into Lewis Hamilton, which kind of slowed Hamilton down, which then he had to get his speed back up, where Stroll was just able to kind of go around it and make his move. So, and then eventually Lewis Hamilton caught up to him. And the one thing I was really worried about is if we were going to hear George Russell, constantly pleading, "Can I pass Lewis Hamilton now?"
Yeah.
If I pass him now, maybe I can catch up to Max Verstappen and put him behind, and then I'll let Lewis Hamilton pass me.
Sure. Yeah.
some of those explanations that he had. Yeah. So I was kind of worried, but Lewis Hamilton had really good pace, and George Russell, he also was having really good pace. And it looked like George Russell might catch up to him, but then Hamilton kind of pressed it or, pushed it a little bit, and Russell couldn't come back. Like, Russell fell pretty far behind Hamilton. And so then George Russell just basically had to worry about Checo Perez, and he ended up not coming to fruition. So, he lucked out there. But, I mean, I felt like the Mercedes car had really good pace. I think Aston Martin, like I said, they would pass someone, and then a few laps later they would get passed by someone else. And I just felt like they couldn't really get going. Now, they still had a really good result. I mean, it wasn't terrible. I think it was like 6 and 7 or 7 and 8.
6 and 7.
I mean, not bad. I'm not saying it was like, oh, how could they? But
Right.
it was a little concerning just for if you're an Aston Martin fan or if you thought Aston Martin, because they really just couldn't. Man, they just couldn't find it today.
Yeah.
It was very strange. I really thought that Fernando Alonso was going to do better, but Carlos Sainz. Let's see, Lance Stroll and Fernando Alonso were over a minute behind Max Verstappen. That's crazy.
Yeah.
But they were almost 20 seconds behind Carlos Sainz, who ended up in 5th. So, I don't know, not great. And Esteban Ocon, he kind of struggled, but he was around there. He was kind of flirting around Fernando Alonso for a little while. And Lance Stroll.
He's been a disruptor the last 2 races.
Yeah. And Lance Stroll, I mean, he barely beat Fernando Alonso. If there were 10 more laps in this race, I kind of wonder if Alonso would have gone ahead of Stroll, which, again, kind of makes me worried about Lance Stroll, because he had so much better of a race today than Fernando Alonso, and they kind of basically ended up in the same spot, and it wasn't as good. And if I'm being honest, if I were Aston Martin, I would have probably swapped the two, because, Fernando Alonso in the Drivers' Championship would probably have a better chance than Lance Stroll.
Yeah.
But anyway.
And then just would be remiss if we didn't talk about it. Ferrari just absolutely. I think Leclerc specifically, because Carlos Sainz did his job. He got 5th. And we can probably say that Mercedes upgrades probably superseded Ferrari, what they have currently. I think Ferrari is just kind of dragging their feet to get to summer break to hopefully get back to the drawing board and fix whatever is going on. But I think too, Charles Leclerc, he started, I think, out at pit, and then he climbed all the way up to, I think, 7th was his highest place. And then something happened and he just slipped all the way down to he was then fighting for 13th place. And then the last, I think 8 laps, then he's finally made a push for 11th. And just pitiful, man. He barely finished ahead of Yuki, who was complaining about everything in this race, which was really funny. Yuki on the radio is the funniest thing I've ever heard. But Pierre Gasly paced better than Leclerc. I mean, I don't know, man. Leclerc the last 2 races, not the greatest showing. Ferrari just, I don't know, man. Feels like they're underwhelming, considering I think arguably they have 2 really good drivers.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's the car, is it the drivers, but I don't know, man. Last 2 weeks, and it makes me concerned for the Canadian race. Are they going to be able to handle this? Because now now they're like maybe the fourth fastest team. But with the way Alpine's been driving, like maybe now Ferrari's the fifth, because Alpine had a really
Alpine's
great
been
race.
doing really well.
They had a really good race in Monaco. They had a pretty good race this go around in Spain. So I don't know, man. Ferrari is just slipping, and I don't know what's going on, but definitely I can imagine it's definitely not what their expectations are or what they want to maintain. And I don't know about you, but the last two races, all I've heard is Carlos Sainz be more and more upset about something with the car or whatever. Leclerc, same thing, just really short-tempered and just something's not going on. I think you even told me in qualifying, or no, I think I heard in qualifying, Leclerc just was having problems with the car just all day.
Yeah,
he wasn't able to keep it down. It was, I think he had some. I think he's something about the back tires were slipping, so he wasn't able to get a good grip.
Yeah.
So just really, really odd things that happen when they really need it the most. So
yeah, it's unfortunate to see Leclerc, and it just feels like every race with Ferrari, it's one ends up in the points and usually was like in third or second possibly, and then all of a sudden drops to like fifth or sixth and ends up not getting podium. And then the other driver, looked like they were going to get in the points as well, but then they fell out and ended up in 11th or 12th or 13th. Like, it just seems like it's every single race with Ferrari this year. And I'm with you. I don't, it's hard to pinpoint like what it is. With Carlos Sainz, it's been a lot of penalties. And like I had, we had talked about, a few weeks back when we were talking about it, was it the right call? We were you and I were 50-50 on it. And it was just like, it just feels like everything is against Ferrari right now. And I'm not saying that Formula One is trying to force Ferrari, down a peg, but it just kind of seems like everything that could go wrong for Ferrari, minus having, just engine troubles every single race, it has been going wrong for Ferrari. And I don't know if it's the plans that they're making. I don't know if maybe it's the drivers. I don't know if it's the car. I don't know. But it's very fishy to me, because we were talking about Ferrari possibly, being set. We thought Ferrari. Well, okay. I had the thought of Ferrari could be second, and possibly rival Red Bull a little bit. Because they do have a really fast car, and it doesn't seem as fast as last year.
No,
I don't know how you go backwards from last year. I don't understand it, and I think Ferrari is really in trouble with. Now there's talks of like, does Ferrari possibly let Carlos Sainz go to see if maybe they can shake things up, or how are they going to keep Charles Leclerc if this keeps happening? Ferrari is. I mean, they're in shambles right now. I mean, that plain and simple. You have Charles Leclerc, who's arguably one of the best drivers on the grid, and he came in 11th, and he was lucky to get 11th. You have Carlos Sainz, who at one point was in third place. Actually, in second place, and he ends up in fifth place. Like, that shouldn't happen. If you have a good car, you should be staying in second place the whole time, or like maybe dropping to third if another driver had a better day. Like, you shouldn't be dropping to fifth.
Yeah.
Like, that's crazy. Checo started 11th, or I'm sorry, he started he started 11th and ended up in fourth place. George Russell started 12th and ended up in third place. So those are teams that are saying, we can fall back this far, but we trust our car, we trust our plans, and we trust our drivers to do that. They absolutely did, and I just feel like Ferrari, one of those three, is not happening, and I can't pinpoint it right now, because I feel like they have one of the most talented drivers on the grid, and they have a great number 2 guy who. arguably could be considered one of the best number 2 guys on the grid as well.
Mhm.
And then you have a really fast Ferrari car, in my opinion, but for some reason it's not going, and for some reason it's not performing. So I don't know what it is, but
Yeah.
it's very strange. And I died when Charles Leclerc started on hards.
Mhm.
They pitted him after like something like 11 or 13 laps or something on hards.
Right. Yeah.
Like, shouldn't be doing that.
Mhm.
And they put him back on hards.
Yeah.
It was like, what are you doing?
Their tire management, and I think if I'm not mistaken, they rely on the drivers to pit, but their tire management is not the greatest. Like
Terrible.
Red Bull, Aston Martin, those 2 teams pretty much have their tire management down pretty well. I think Mercedes at some points too. I mean, there's a couple races where they've had some gaffes on the tires, but Ferrari, like they always, it seems like start on the wrong tire. I know that they did that for, I think, Carlos Sainz a couple of races ago. This race with Leclerc. So I don't know if it's the principle, if it's the engineering, but we'll see. I think an interesting race, the Canada race in 2 weeks will be interesting because Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc both had pretty good days on a race last year there. I think Carlos Sainz, it said, placed 4th, and I think Sainz placed 6th last year.
Yeah.
So maybe this is the track that gets them back because, it's like we talked about, it's a little bit more straightaway. So maybe, if we're going to really see how fast the Ferrari car still is or isn't maybe we'll see it on this track. So we'll see. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Correction. Ferrari driver Carlos Sainz finished 2nd, and then Leclerc finished 5th last year in Canada. So maybe the Canada race is what helped gets Ferrari back on track, but we'll see. It seems like the problems are just deeper than their car. So
yeah, it's unfortunate. I wish they were doing a lot better, but right now it's just they're in shambles.
Yeah. All right, sir. Do you have the MLB top 5 power rankings?
I do.
All right. Why don't
I have
you
them right in my face.
right in your face?
Right in my face.
Then why don't you give us your top 5 power ranking as of today? And I don't know, did it change a lot after today's games?
No, not from today. I didn't really factor it in. Like, now we're kind of getting to the point of the baseball season where, one win doesn't really change much. It's got to be kind of a week now. So we're kind of around there now. But so today didn't really factor into what I ended up picking here. But so I went with, I'll start from 1 and go to 5. 1, I still have the Tampa Bay Rays. I almost put the Dodgers at 1. I have the Dodgers at 2. I know that.
Wow.
I mean, if you're looking at the records, then yeah. But first of all, the Rays have been kind of slowly starting to dial it back a little bit. They're not playing as well as they started the year.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think right now the division is getting better and better. And it kind of just feels like they're starting to feel that. And I do think that the Dodgers have had to overcome a little bit more than what the Rays have. Rays have been pretty much healthy other than Tyler Glasnow, who finally just came off the IL. And so I think that was a benefit to have him. But his first game that he pitched, they ended up losing, and it wasn't because he wasn't pitching really well. So that's my little concern. I mean, I'm not that concerned. I did think about putting the Dodgers over the Rays, but I was just like, no, you know what? I think the Rays, still not even having 20 losses yet, I think is still, very impressive. First of all, first team to 40 wins, of course. This team is doing really well, but I do think that their hitters are going to start slowing down, and that's when you're going to really see how the Rays are as a team. I just think right now they're kind of riding on a high, and they've just been really continuing it so far. It'll be interesting to see what they do at the All-Star break, whether they can keep that momentum going, and if they can, then this team is legit. But it's kind of I don't know. I'm very hesitant to say that the Rays are all in all the best team in baseball right now. I don't believe that. So
Okay.
number 2, I do have the Dodgers, as I said. Like I said, I think they've overcome a lot and still have been doing a lot of winning. Now, of course, people are going to argue with me and be like, well, they're 4-6 in their last 10 games, and they've lost 2 in a row now. And, Arizona is now tied, and the Giants are starting to kind of creep back into – listen, I understand all that, but they're without their ace. They don't have their ace. He's not going to be here this year. They've had guys in and out of the IL like crazy. I mean, it's just like a domino effect. It was James Outman at one point, and then it was, they had to throw out Jason Hayward, who's been a little bit better this year with the Dodgers. So you can just see the little things that they've had to kind of overcome a little bit. And listen, they're still a dominant team. I mean, you still got Mookie Betts, of course. Max Muncy was in one of the biggest slumps. They were talking about possibly dropping him to AAA. And then he played the Giants, and then all of a sudden
got back on track.
This guy had got right back on track, and he's hitting. I think he's hitting probably one of the best times that I've seen him hit in a very long time. So this is good news for the Dodger fans. And honestly, their pitching has not been that fantastic. Julio Urias is okay right now. Kershaw has been okay. And their bullpen hasn't been dominant, but yet they still find ways to win. So that's what I mean by them overcoming a lot of things. Their pitching has been fantastic, and they've had a lot of guys hurt, and like I said, their ace is hurt, and I've been saying that all year. They're still playing really well. So I have the Rangers at 3.
Okay.
This is one of those times now where I could see literally any of these 5 teams at number 1. Rangers are playing really well, and I think they're in a division. I know you look at Oakland, and right now Seattle is kind of underwhelming right now. But I look at they have the Angels in their division. They're fighting off the Astros, and they're winning a lot of their games. They're 8-2 in their last 10 games. They're on a 3-game winning streak. And Bruce Bochy, for some reason, just gets the best out of his hitters.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is, but his teams, Bruce Bochy's teams, do not strike out. And that's what I've been really focused on this year is the Rangers are not striking out a ton. And the pitchers, without Jacob deGrom, have been really good. Andrew Heaney was really good with the Dodgers, and he was nice. He was a nice story, but he's done almost the exact same thing that he was doing with the Dodgers, still with the Rangers. So it doesn't look like it was a fluke. So this is a really impressive Rangers team, and I think Corey Seager is having a good time there, and Marcus Semien. Both of those two guys are really thriving off each other and off this team, winning a lot of games. So this is a really exciting team to watch.
Do you think Bruce Bochy is on the early consideration for Manager of the Year?
Yeah, I think 1,000%. I think he would come in second to the Rays manager right now, but I think he's right up there right now because this Ranger team was no good last year. I mean, they were like. It kind of was like, why did they even sign Corey Seager? Why did they sign Marcus Semien? And they get Bruce Bochy, and then they signed Jacob deGrom. They're like, okay, yeah, that's gonna do, and it didn't. It was like, it's wild. So my number 4 team, I have the Atlanta Braves. I really have been reluctant to kind of put them on here, just because I don't think they've been great. But when I look at Ronald Acuna Jr. having an MVP type season right now, and we're talking about him as a 40-40 guy. This guy could hit 40 home runs and 40 steals and all in the same year, which has not been done. That would be insane. So it's kind of hard for me to take him out, and I think the Braves have finally found their rhythm. It kind of felt like they were like, they'd get really hot and then they'd get really cold. And then Austin Riley was in a real big slump. Ozzie Albies was doing fine. Olsen was on on a streaker, and then Olsen kind of dialed it back, and then Austin Riley started picking it up again. And now it's kind of like everyone is in sync now. It's like Acuna, Olsen, Riley, Albies. You're just getting all these guys who are finally starting to get into a groove, and then the pitching is starting to get healthy for Atlanta as well. And that's a big thing as well. So Atlanta is a very interesting team, but I do also think they're kind of benefiting right now that the Mets aren't doing great. And they're not doing bad. I'm not saying they're bad, but and Miami is kind of a little bit on their heels, but I kind of think Atlanta's not really too worried about them right now. And Philadelphia has been a little disappointing right now. Yeah. And then they're not worried about Washington. So, I just think Atlanta is kind of coasting right now, but I do think they have found their rhythm. And when they need to eke out a win, they eke it out. So, and then finally, this one was hard. This was a hard one, but I'm actually going to put the Yankees at 5.
Wow.
I know we could put the Orioles up there, but I do think, and I've been watching the Orioles play the Giants. I see the weakness in the Orioles. I know they're still winning games, and they obviously beat the Giants. They won the series this weekend, but I just see the pitching is not as crisp as I thought it was going, or as I thought it was. Their hitters are, ridiculous. This is a good hitting team. But I do think the Yankees as a whole are a lot better team. I think they have a sprinkle of pitching, a sprinkle of hitting, and their bullpen you can sprinkle in there a little bit as well. And they can grind out wins. And so I don't think the Yankees are panicked that they're behind the Rays by 6 games. I don't think they're panicked that they're 2 games behind the Orioles. I think they really think the Orioles are going to crumble themselves, and the Yankees will end up benefiting. And Toronto is starting to ramp up a little bit as well. So, and even Boston, you could say, is still in this race here. So this is a very tough division. I think when you look at it that way, the Yankees are one of the more experienced teams when it comes to having all the same guys. So, I have to go with the Yankees. Now, that could definitely change, tomorrow or in a couple of days. But right now, I'm going to go with the Yankees.
No consideration for the Astros?
I did consider the Astros, but I think the Yankees are a better team than the Astros right now. I think the Astros are, like I said, like with the Braves, they're kind of in their rhythm now. I kind of feel like the Astros haven't hit their rhythm yet. I think they are surprised about how the Rangers are playing. So, and then obviously Altuve just came back. So he's going to have to kind of get into the game flow again. So I think the Astros are, I would say, about a month away from really, really, truly finding the rhythm.
Okay. All right. So just to repeat, you have 1 being the Rays.
1 is the Rays. 2 is the Dodgers. 3 are the Rangers. 4 are the Braves. And 5 I have the Yankees.
Probably your most controversial list so far.
Why? What's controversial about it?
Well, you left off the Orioles. Some probably would argue with you about
Orioles. Okay, Astros.
Yeah,
I thought about putting the Diamondbacks there, but
I will say too, some may argue that the Dodgers are a little high, and you're like probably like the Texans are probably more of an argument to go number 2 than the Dodgers. But I get it; you're in a hostile situation right now, married to a Dodger fan. So I understand.
No, this is power rankings. This is not who has the better record. I look at how the teams play, and I think if you were to put the Dodgers against the Rangers, I would still trust the Dodgers over the Rangers. I think the Rangers would make it a very interesting game, but I trust the Dodgers hitters and the Dodgers pitchers, for that matter, more than the Rangers still. The Rangers are having a nice start, but Dodgers have done it for longer. It's the same reason why I have the Yankees in the top 5 over the Orioles. The Yankees have done it longer than the Orioles because they're not a brand new team. The Orioles are kind of a very young team. And yes, they have that spry going, but, it's got to last all season, and history tells us it doesn't. So that's why I put the Yankees ahead.
All right. So quickly, what's your percentage of the Giants getting a wild card or making the playoffs?
Oh boy,
I need a percentage.
Oh Jesus. I don't know. Okay, I gotta look at where they're at right now to kind of gauge.
They're 29-30 as of today from their
loss
against the Orioles.
They're 2.5 games behind for the wild card spot.
I know there's been
this
some
is a tough one
with the pitching. I know that their hitting is kind of coming back a little bit, although Casey Schmidt has cooled off a little bit. But
yeah, and I mean we figured that was going to happen. This is what's hard about it is there's a lot of young talent, and it kind of sounds like there's another young kid who could be called up later. Mm-hmm. I'm going to go right now because I'm going to be optimistic. I'm going to say it's a 50% chance that they get in right now. I could see how they can get in. I could see how they would. Their pitching is starting to get a lot better. Sean Manaea is finally starting to pitch a lot better. Ross Stripling was starting to pitch a little bit better, and Taylor Rogers, who was probably our best pickup in the offseason, he finally is starting to really ramp it up and get to where he was, and which has been huge for us in the bullpen. And then that has actually transitioned to Camilo Doval really pitching a lot better too. So the pitching in the bullpen where we thought it was going to be is now getting better. It sounds like we're going to get Luke Jackson back very, very soon, who's another guy we signed in the offseason, another bullpen hand. So that will help as well. So, the Giants do have a chance, but the hitters that we have, most of the time or throughout their career are streaky hitters. They're not consistent. So you have a Mitch Haniger who right now he's kind of struggling. Michael Conforto was on a hot streak, recently. Casey Schmidt, as you just brought up, but now he's cold, Brandon Crawford, as much as I love Brandon Crawford, he's not that consistent of a hitter. Sable has really cooled off. He was having a hot start. Now he's kind of hit and miss. Lamont Wade has actually been doing really well. Yaz has kind of cooled off. I mean, I could go through the whole team, but I won't. And it's a lot of young kids. That's the other thing is they don't know how to really get out of that slump yet in the majors, because the majors from AAA to majors is such a huge gap. It's still like crazy, but you kind of have to learn certain things, but sometimes you kind of rely on your talent. And in AAA, you can't get away with that if you are, a good enough player. So that's why I'm a little reluctant to say, 60%, 75%, they're going to get in the playoffs. I think that's being a little too optimistic. I do think they have a chance. Like I said, I think their pitching is starting to really do well, but their hitting needs to be a little more consistent, or, if one guy's on a cold streak, another guy needs to be on a hot streak. So
sure.
We kind of have to hit that. And I just don't think we're there quite yet, but I do see us possibly getting there. It'll be interesting to see what they do at the trade deadline, because it seems like the Giants the last 2 years have been here every single year where it's like, okay, do we make trades to get better, or do we trade away for the future? And that's going to be really interesting. So this next couple of months is going to be very interesting to see what the Giants are going to have to do at the trade deadline.
Gotcha. All right, Drew, you ready for our new series?
I think so.
All right. So for those that don't know, I don't think we did this last year, so we're kind of picking this back up from 2 years ago.
Yeah.
We're going to go through our series of top 10s. We're going to start off with the running backs this week, and then on our next episode, I think we'll figure out what the next position we're going to do. But Drew, I don't know about you, man, but I had a hard time trying to come up with like 10 legit like top 10. Like I think I was telling you this. 1 through 5 was pretty easy. I'd say like 6 and 7. I think I did okay with 8, 9, and 10. And honorable mentions, I had a hard time with. I struggled with that. I had a hard time trying to figure out who I wanted to squeeze in there. Did you have the same problem?
I had no problem writing down names. It was trying to make it into 10.
Okay, yeah.
I had an issue with like, man, I should make this a top 15. Because I was like, oh yeah, I forgot about him. Oh yeah, about him. Oh yeah. And I just felt like I was constantly doing that. And so I was like, man, am I just this bad, or am I just like, second guessing myself? So that was my issue. But
Okay.
overall, I do think I like my list.
Okay.
I mean, anyone's going to poke holes in anything. So I'm just going to put myself out there and say, this is my top 10. This is what I think. And I'm going to live with it. And I'm sure there's going to be one, because it happens every time. 1 or 2 where everyone's going to be like, oh, you thought he was going to be good, huh? I'm like, yeah, I did. So I'm sorry that I, went out on a limb and, basically, 98 days until football. And I was willing to put myself out there and say, I think he's still one of the best running backs or whatever.
All right. I might be that one that teases.
Just a little salty. That's whatever.
I guess so. Okay, so I feel like we should do at least one honorable mention. And then I feel like we should switch it up. We usually do 10 to 1, but I think 1 is pretty much unanimous between you and I. At least for me, I don't think there's much of a question about it any longer. So I think if we go 1 to 10, I think as we get deeper into the list where it's a lot harder to kind of keep it in the later numbers, I think will be the most entertaining. So Drew, I'll let you kick it off. Who's your 1 honorable mention if you have one? I
already know you're gonna hate my number 1.
You're
gonna disagree. No, you're not gonna hate my number 1, but you're going to disagree. I already know it, but I have a reason for it.
Okay. Well, before you do that, give me your honorable mention, and then.
Oh, I don't have any honorable mentions.
Oh, okay. Well,
I didn't want to write all of those names down. I just was like, first of all, I'm missing. I'll say this: I'm missing Najee Harris.
Okay.
Aaron Jones. Who was the other one I was looking at that I missed?